Marketer of the Day, episode 591. Run your business like a predictable, repeatable, dependable money-making machine by delegating with the techie mentor, Susan Mershon.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. So I have a quick question for you. Do you feel overwhelmed, or at the very least that maybe your knowledge isn't as deep or as current or as up to the minute as it could or should be? Well, then the answer is that you probably need someone else to help you out. You need a team of some sort, and it can just be a team of one person to help lighten the load for you a little bit, and that could mean a virtual assistant. So you're in luck, and this is going to be probably the best podcast episode you listen to today, because we're here with Susan Mershon, and Susan is the techie mentor, and Susan helps to get you and your virtual assistant business figured out. So Susan teaches the strategies, the skills, and the systems you need to design, build, and grow that thriving business that runs on autopilot, that's super smooth, where you can just focus on what you enjoy and what you're good at, and then have those other techie experts deal with all the debugging and the frustrations, and that way you can focus on what you love. So Susan, glad to be talking to you.
Thank you so much, Robert. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, heck yeah, my pleasure. And I just want to plug your website for people real quick. Your website is thetechiementor.com. And so I hear that you can tell us what we need to know about maybe outsourcing some or all of that techie stuff, and about virtual assistants. So is that right?
That is right.
Awesome. So, I mean, what's a good starting point? I mean, like when you say to people, you know, I can teach you about virtual assistants and things like that. Is there any like resistance? Do people usually have any like common, I don't know, like objections or roadblocks to going down this road?
Yes, that's a great question. Actually, for most of us, including myself, you know, you spend a lot of time and energy developing your business, and, you know, blood, sweat, and tears, and it becomes almost like a family member, right? It's a baby to a lot of us. And so there's a trust issue as to handing over the reins, so to speak, to the day-to-day runnings of the business, right? Because most of us are in business to do what we love, not the day-to-day stuff that makes the business run. And so a common problem, I guess, or issue would be just overall trust, you know, letting go of control of the systems that run the business, so you can go out and sell more, or take a vacation, right? Or, you know, go on a world tour and not have to worry that your business, you know, is failing, or it's not working, or your customers are not being taken care of. So I think that's a really big one for most people. And I would say a secondary one, Robert, would be money. You know, and I understand this because I bootstrapped when I started. You have to understand that your time is more valuable sometimes than doing a lot of the admin or technology work yourself, if you can. So you have to actually step back and look at how much is it really costing you for you to do the work when you're sacrificing your time and energy on stuff you don't like to do, when you should be marketing and getting in front of your audience to earn more money, right?
Right.
And so it's really those two steps. It's really just trust. And I'm not saying they don't trust the people. It's a control thing of letting go. And then two, you know, common theme is I can't afford it. But it's almost like you have to show them the numbers on that they have to figure out how to afford it, because they can't earn any more money because they don't have any more time, right? They hit that ceiling and they need help in order to expand their business.
Right, yeah, and I'm glad that we started there, because those, I mean, I definitely, I can relate to that, and I've gone back and forth in a lot of different ways over the years with that sort of thing of, like you said, the trust issue of saying, well, now I'm going to have to basically hand over the keys to my business to a perfect stranger who might be over in, you know, Croatia or something. And no offense to the country of Croatia, but that's, you know, however many thousands of miles away. I've never met this person. I don't even know who I'm dealing with. They might be some, you know, 15-year-old in a basement. So that's really scary. And even if I do trust the person, I'm not sure if their computer might get hacked, and then my passwords might get out there and shared. And you always hear about sites getting hacked. And I'm thinking, well, I'm afraid to let too many people in, or more people in there than there has to be. And then also, yeah, same thing with the money situation. And what really perplexes me about that part of it is whenever this whole topic of like outsourcing, delegation gets discussed, it seems like people gravitate to X dollars per month, right? They don't think, okay, maintaining my website or setting up my website, that'll be $200 or $400, or getting those articles written, $200. They think, oh, it'll be $2,000 per month. Like there seems to be this mind block where people look at a virtual assistant, outsourced worker as like a piece of the pie taken out of their income every month. And I'm thinking like, well, it doesn't have to be that way, at least not at first, right?
Right. And you have to look at it as an asset, right? So it is an expense, but it's also an asset. If you can find somebody, that you can partner and trust with, you can fly because you have a peace of mind that you didn't have before. And let's be honest, most entrepreneurs, one-man shops, they can do all the admin stuff. They can do customer service, they can do their inbox, they can do their calendar, but they cannot do the technology side of things. They don't know how to, put in together an automation and ConvertKit and then hook it up to their website, right? And so they struggle and waste a lot of time with that versus if you look at the investment, getting somebody who knows those systems and can do it for you cost effectively and it works and it's a kind of a setup one and done and then some tweaks, it really lets that entrepreneur fly and do what they love to do because they have the peace of mind and they don't worry about their business running, right? Because that's the beauty of an online business is the technology.
Yeah, and as you're describing that that whole situation of struggling with the technology, it feels like it's like low self-esteem in certain areas and then like arrogance or overconfidence in other areas, right? Because that low self-esteem it sounds like maybe some people, they undervalue maybe the 2 weeks it would take to master ConvertKit, right? They look at all those weeks and trial and error and learning stuff and they say, well, it's not worth me paying someone $200 or $100 instead of ConvertKit. I'm going to waste 3 weeks on it. And I'm thinking, so you're basically paying yourself $3 an hour at that point. Yeah. And then there's also that arrogant side of things where it's like, well, I can figure out this technology stuff. I can click a few buttons. And it's like, okay, well, you could, but do you want to spend all that time learning it and as opposed to just going to someone who already has this sort of skill? And something that was really interesting to me that you mentioned in there is that once you run the numbers, once you calculate that actual value, then maybe we can get to something concrete because it's like, it feels like when we keep things in our head, things are totally out of proportion, right? We think that we're spending more or less time on stuff than we actually are. So it sounds like you're saying that once we break out the calculator and say, well, how much time would that take you versus how much would that cost you, then suddenly it becomes clear and it makes sense to just pay the money and get it over with. Is that on the right track?
Yeah, because, systems are key to any business. So a business is really a system, right? So let's just put it in dollars and cents. Okay. So let's say that you're starting your business, maybe you're a coach and you want to do a group coaching program. Okay. And then you realize that there's so many different moving parts to that because there's the delivery, there's the sales, right? There's the marketing, all of those systems, and then the business, right? So those 4 key systems, and they have to work together. But here's the thing. So you may have to pay somebody $2,500 to set up the entire system, but that system will make you thousands of dollars a month going forward, right? So, do you want to get it done right? Not that you couldn't do it right, but do you want to spend 6 months figuring it out on your own and trials and errors? Or do you want to pay somebody that can set it up and you can get successful faster because they did all the heavy lifting and they know how to get it done and you can start making income from what you just launched?
Right. Awesome. And you won't get those 6 months back. And something that really clicked for me really recently was sort of on this topic. I had a friend who had the analogy of, well, you wouldn't build your own house, right? You wouldn't like make your own toilet and make your own stairs and make your own roof and put it in your own air conditioning. You'd either hire someone to do, or even better, just buy a pre-existing house. I mean, you wouldn't, build your own car. You just go and you'd buy a car for yourself. But it seems like a lot of people seem to have this block where they just don't see that connection of, well, okay, you can spend 6 months on that, but then now you're out the 6 months. Now you could have been making progress in all kinds of ways. Now you're not going to be as motivated as you were when you started. I mean, yeah, it makes perfect sense. And in this sort of situation, talking about hiring a team, I love the success stories, because it seems like what you do and what you teach, it brings a lot of happiness to business owners, right? Because they go from either struggling or overworked to now they can have some clarity. Now they have time to think. Now they can focus on the marketing. So do you have any interesting case studies or success stories like that where you have like a before and after, where you came to a client and it was just a mess and you just cleaned things up for them?
Yeah, I have a couple. So, in my early days of being a VA, I was lucky enough to have a client who moved from one shopping cart to Infusionsoft. And she knew I didn't know Infusionsoft, but I'm a techie. So she's like, oh, go ahead and learn it. We'll learn it together. And so, we moved over to Infusionsoft, and I learned the back end and everything. And then she would refer me to her clients or her friends or her, colleagues that, oh yeah, Susan knows Infusionsoft. And so I remember I got a call from somebody asking if I did audits of Infusionsoft. And I said, well, what are you looking for? And she said, well, we had somebody that, somebody that put it together for us. And then we had other people in there. And long story short is they just made a total mess of it. So nothing was integrated. Nothing was flowing. It was all, people weren't getting what they needed. And so they said, we need somebody to help us because, they're paying a lot of money every month for this system and it's not working. And so they hired me to do an audit. And so I sold them 2 hours of my time and I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'll go in and I'll figure out what is wrong with your system. And I said, then I'll give you a proposal. I said, you have to understand the audit is just to find out what's wrong. If you want me to fix it, then that's another expense. And they're like, okay, well, at this point we're losing money because the system's not working. And so I did the audit. I came back and I explained to them what was wrong with it and how it needed to be fixed. And, it was a couple month project, but the point being is that, they were bleeding money because the problem is that clients were getting, they were buying things and they weren't getting it. They weren't getting access to the things that they were selling to them online. And, after they hired me, even though they didn't like the number that I gave them, they realized and, that they had to do something or, things were going to continue to spiral out of control. So I got it fixed for them and they got it, back up and running. And they came back to me and said, you charged me all this money. And at the time we thought it was absorbent, but now that the thing is fixed, we're making 5 times that every month and it's growing.
Super cool.
Yeah. So, that's just one story, but there are other ones where people try to do their own product launches and they don't realize everything that goes into a product launch. It's a project because there's so many moving pieces to it. And then they spend all this time and energy, or, they hire people that are $2 an hour to do the work. And then the project flops and the product launch flops and they make, $1,000 when they spent $8. So people need to realize that if you're going to do a large launch of an online product, whether it's a course or a membership program, you have to look at investing up front, because here's the beauty again, is when you invest once, it's a rinse and repeat system. So every time you want to launch, you've already got the system in place. And so it's a system that will continually earn you money. And so I had a client once that did their own launch, made no money. Their business coach told them, you need to find somebody to help you. So they hired me. The first launch we did together, she made 25 grand. So, and now she's continuing to make more and more money because the system's still in place. And once in a while I'll do a couple of tweaks. But the point is you have to look at the end game, right? Not what you've got today, but what's your end game? What's that goal? How do you get there? Well, you have to make an investment to get there because you have to use the technology to get you there, right?
Right. Yeah, and you're making a lot of light bulbs go off for me for a couple of reasons. One is one of the things that got me actually motivated finally after a bunch of years in business to finally realize that I can't do it all myself, that I need to outsource, is that repeatable, that rinse and repeat concept that you just outlined right there, that it's difficult to say, oh, I'm going to hire someone to make my website or do my product launch. But then when you think of it, when you change your thinking and think in terms of, okay, they're setting up that asset for me. And
Yeah,
now there's that repeatable template, right? If I
yeah,
know that I can put in X number of dollars and then have Y number of dollars come out for a product launch, then great. That's something I can repeat for these other courses, or I can pay someone to set up the website and do the launch. And then that makes money right there. And then I can go and put, much less effort in next time and reopen the cart and send some more emails and do another launch of that. So that's one of those many things that really got me over the hump of hiring someone, is saying, well, it might be, there might be a little bit of back and forth or growing pains or figuring things out, or finding the right person that first time around. But once I get that figured out, then I can repeat the process. And the other thing that you mentioned in there that's, I think, really important for people to sit up and take notice about is that it doesn't have to just be all or nothing, right? We can just dip our toe in the water a little bit. And I really liked there how you said that you can, number one, do an audit, and number two, that people can hire someone like you for troubleshooting, right? It doesn't have to be a matter of, well, my Infusionsoft card's broken and the only option available for me is to completely throw it out and then hire someone new to build it up from scratch. There can be the situation where you can hire, a consultant to jump in and figure out your launch and plan things out, or you can hire a techie person to jump in your shopping cart and figure out where the problem area is. And it's probably a lot less painful, a lot faster, a lot cheaper than a lot of people think, because you're just paying for a few hours of someone's time to jump in and work their magic. And then it goes back to that whole saying of, like if you, let's say your refrigerator's broken and you hire someone to come in and they look at the problem and they push the button and they say, well, that'd be $400. And you're like, well, why is it $400? You just push the one button. And it's like, well, you paid the $1 for me to push the button, you paid the $399 for me to have all these years of experience learning to figure out just the right button to push. And you could have spent 6 months pushing all the wrong buttons, but I knew just the right button to push. So that's really reassuring that there's this option out there for people to do an audit of their systems if things aren't working, and that it's not necessarily where you have to throw out what you have. It can just be troubleshooted there. And then once you have some success with one of these virtual assistant workers, then you can go back and hire that person, right? Because now if someone debugged your Infusionsoft and you say, well, now I want to, amp up my affiliate program, or I want to add more products or something, well, that person has proven themselves by just doing that small quickie service with you. And now there's that element of trust that we're talking about today, where you might not trust someone to completely run the techie side of your business right away, but they prove themselves competent in a number of areas. And then you say, all right, well, now I trust the person because they've helped me out these last 5 times. So this is all, I think, really reassuring for a lot of people.
Yeah, agreed. And you're right. You can start the relationship as an audit, or you can even start a relationship as a trial, right? There's no reason that you cannot hire somebody for 2 hours to do one thing, to see not just how they work, but how do they communicate, right? How do they handle the relationship? And I think that's really key, because working with a VA, right, just like working with a coach, it's a relationship. You have to have a trust and you have to have an understanding. And so I'm all about, hiring somebody for 2 hours just to see how we work together and how they do their work, how it's delivered, the quality. I mean, all the things that go into that as well. So yeah, you could do audits, but you could also look at, just a trial. There's nothing wrong with that.
I like that a lot. Yeah. So here's my next question based on that is, so let's say someone out there in podcast land has an online business and they're listening to all this and they say, okay, I'm sold on this idea of, I don't need to just do anything crazy, just hire someone for 2 hours. So how do I decide on what I'm hiring someone for 2 hours for? Should it be a matter of like where the biggest hurt is in my business, or should I take an inventory and like rank things, or should it be a matter of, is there something nagging, some kind of like task or important thing in my business that I think I should do, but I'm not sure about? Or should I hire the person for 2 hours just to look at my whole business? Or like, it's easy to say, well, hire someone for 2 hours, but what in the most, like, I guess, common scenario, would I be hiring someone for 2 hours for?
Okay, so that's a great question. So there's no one size fits all answer to that because everybody's business and needs are different. But I would always say, I'm a planner, I'm a systems gal. So to me, it would make the most sense to sit down and just kind of write out, either write out your biggest pain points right now, or write out the things that you don't know how to do that need to get done, or things that you don't have time to do that need to get done, right? And so in other words, make a list. And then pick one, prioritize, like you said. What are the things that really need to be done? So, I know I need to build my list, and I need to write, I need to have an indoctrination sequence that my new people get when they join my list, right? So I need to hire a copywriter, for instance. So you could hire a copywriter to do one of the first emails in that sequence, right? Give them the outline and then let them write it. I mean, that would be an example. But for me, I think it's so important to just, before you jump the gun and hire somebody, understand what's the biggest issue you have right now, and what could they do for you to ease your load, but also, start building that relationship and that trust.
Awesome. So make that list, and then so I imagine that something will just like jump out at someone, right? Like if they really take the time to maybe don't just stop at 2 or 3 things, but make that long list. Maybe think about the courses that you've bought, and maybe you bought some marketing course that taught that indoctrination sequence, and then you felt bad because you learned all this great stuff, but then you said, oh yeah, as far as actually applying it, I didn't figure out the techie side because I learned about the marketing sort of thing, but then I didn't actually go in and implement. So there might be some things buried in people's psyches maybe that will be uncovered by making a list like this.
Exactly. And the beauty of the list is that it's living, right? So when that person completes the first thing and they do a great job, then you've got something else for them to do immediately. You don't have to say, well, wait a minute, I have to figure out what else I can have you do, right? You've already kind of got a to-do list that you could just kind of check down and, give to this person or persons to be able to do the work for you. Because just because you can doesn't mean you should, right?
Right. It's hard to learn that lesson sometimes.
And it's very hard for me because, as somebody who can do all aspects of a business, right? I can do all the techie stuff. I understand all how that stuff. It's hard for me sometimes to realize, Susan, you're not supposed to be doing that. That's not where my focus should be, right? So I have a hard time with that because I know how to do this stuff. And it was a long lesson for me to learn to let go and give it to people that I trust to do it. And then once I did that, Robert, it was like, oh my God, why didn't I do this sooner?
Yeah, I know the feeling. It's sort of addicting. And then I think something that really helped me out with this sort of thinking is that I kept hearing from all these people that like, oh, you should outsource everything. That way you can just kick back. And I was thinking, and maybe it's just my personality, but I was thinking, I don't want to kick back. And that was my resistance. But then when I realized, oh yeah, I could hire someone to do this thing I don't want to, and then that frees up more time for me to scale even more, then that finally clicked to me. It's like, okay, it doesn't necessarily have to be that I'm the puppet master and I'm suddenly becoming like the manager of all these people. I can just assign this task to someone else, and then now that frees up, 4 hours a day for me to do that other thing that I'm really passionate about. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a matter of just replacing myself.
Right. And so it's what fuels your fire. Some people just want to take time off. I'm like you. What do you mean? I always got things to do and I like to stay busy. But then you get from that too, the reduce in stress because your plate is overflowing. And you get to the point where you become stagnant because you can't grow anymore because you don't have any more time.
Right. Yeah. And you always hear about these, high income earners who have tons of that free time that you're talking about, right? They have all sorts of time set aside to think about the big picture or about their next move or about their next product line or their next big idea or things like that. And how the heck would you have time for that if you're debugging WordPress issues, if you're spell checking your own articles, doing your own graphics, doing your own customer support? I mean, sounds like, it's easy to say once you kind of take yourself out of it. And so something that I'm really curious about now is, so as far as all these things that a virtual assistant could do, like where is your scope in things? Like if someone makes this list and they figure out all these things that they could do, can you do like everything, or do you like pass things off, or like what's the scope of these sort of virtual assistant services you provide?
So for me, I don't do any of the work directly for clients. Now I'll say with a asterisk is I do some consulting, but mine's also it's systems, right? It's really around systems or project management, which are my two. That's what I get from corporate America. But yeah, what I do is I usually refer, or mostly I refer anybody who comes to me to people that I have trained in skills and systems. So people I know and trust that can do the work that they're looking for. So it's more like a referral mechanism, if you will. Basically, I can provide somebody with some names that fit what they're looking for, and then it's up to that individual to reach out and interview, because it's a relationship, right? It's not a matchmaking. You have to make sure that you jive, right? You have a good vibe with your VA. So people who come to me are usually looking for specific skills. And then what I'll do is look at my database of people that I've trained and I know, and I will say, well, here's, 3 people that meet your specific criteria, and I'll pass along their information. And at that point, it's up to the client to reach out and determine who works best for them.
Awesome, and that's a great service that you provide there, because as we've been saying, like there's that trust issue, and if someone just goes on a freelancing site, who knows who you're getting there, right? And they might have a lot of reviews, or they might have been there a long time, but who knows what their work ethic really is. So if they have you to talk to, and you have these people that have already been vetted, that seems really helpful. And then there's probably also the issue of maybe people, they know what they want, but they're not sure exactly what sort of like job description that is, right? Like if they need that email copywriter, or if
Right.
they need that product launch manager, they might not even know what that special phrase or term is. And then they also might just be sort of impatient, right? In a hurry. And they just say, well, I don't want to spend all this time, going through 20 people on a freelancing site. And you can say, all right, well, here's a couple of people that sound good, and you can see if you jive with them. And then that saves someone all that extra time of finding that person to do the job. So as far as so this kind of like relationship referral systems service that you're talking about, I know it's like kind of a bad loaded question, but what's the price range on this sort of thing?
You mean for kind of the matchmaking, or, giving people vetted VAs? Is that what you're asking? Just so I'm clear.
Yeah, for like you figuring out their needs and the systems and the matchmaking sort of thing.
Yeah. And so right now we are kind of redoing the program. And right now people can pay $150 and they'll get 3 to 5 options. And that will be, they pay the $150 a year. So in other words, if you pay $150, you have access to all these people for a year. Now, a lot of times people come back and want other expertise. Other times they just want somebody, and then, it's not something you have to pay every year, right? It's something if you choose to come back. So it's a yearly fee to have access to these. And just so you know, Robert, I'm also in the process of building a new website called the VA Virtual Alliance. And that will be kind of the hub, and it will actually have, member listings. So I'm really taking it to the next level just because of demand. And so I'm in transition right now, but I'm hoping to have that done in the last quarter of this year. So it'll be the VA Virtual Alliance. And in the VA Virtual Alliance are only people that I have trained. So it's not something that people can buy into to get on the list. I'm all about helping the people that have invested in themselves and their business, and that I know and trust. And those are the people that will be on that website.
Well, fantastic. Well, I can't wait for that to come out, the VA Virtual Alliance. And then as far as what people can and should go over to right now, if someone says, all right, I like what Susan has to say, I want to hop on her website, see what she has to say, and maybe get a call scheduled or figure out if we can work together, where and should people go after listening to our conversation today?
So for now, while I'm working on the website, they can just go to thetechiementor.com, and if they'll just go to my contact page, just jump over there, and there's a little box there that says, how can I help you? Just let me know what we need, and then we'll get together and schedule a call where I can see how I can help you.
Super fantastic. So that's thetechiementor.com. That's TheTechiementor.com, thetechiementor.com. And something that probably took me a lot longer than it should have to figure out is that there's no harm in having some of these quick phone chats. There's no harm in figuring out what your options are, getting some sort of outside opinions as far as what's your problem is and what you need. And like we've been saying, is sometimes it just takes that chat with someone else who's already paved the path of where you want to go, or just to maybe you have some big long story about what you need and where you're stuck, and they can just put a label on it and say, oh yeah, what your problem is your conversion rate, and what you need is this website optimizer or copywriter. Or they talk about their website and things are broken, and you say, okay, what you need is a programmer to jump in and debug things. And just having that call will put you in the direction of where you need to go, because you sure as heck can't do any of this online business stuff or business stuff in general by yourself. You need these outside experts. You need someone else to help point you in the direction of where you need to go. And so the place to go is thetechiementor.com to be pointed in that direction. So we'll see you over on thetechiementor.com. And thanks so much, Susan, for stopping by, sharing some cool stories, and just telling us what we need to figure out. That way we don't run out of time in the day, and we can do what makes us money and is fun too. So thanks for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the time. This was great fun. Hopefully everybody got some great information out of it.
I think they did. Thanks for listening to today's program. Start from the beginning or view past episodes at marketeroftheday.com/episodes.